In this episode, we'll take a look at the workflow I use when I'm creating a YouTube video. Now this will be kind of a high-level overview of what I do when I'm making a YouTube video, whether it's a product review or a tutorial. And the reason I'm doing this is I've had several requests for it. This process or workflow is not the right workflow. It's just the one I use. I'm not here to suggest that you should change to what I'm doing. Maybe just share what I do and maybe there'll be some insights or something helpful for you. Maybe there's some things that some of you will suggest that I'll learn that will make my process better. So let's dive in. Number one, if I'm doing, for example, a product review or a tutorial, the first thing obviously is to do the research and the testing. So if it's a new product, ideally I like to work with it for about a month. Sometimes I only have about 2 weeks, but I need at least those 2 weeks really to kind of get to know the product and be able to run it through a variety of scenarios. So that's the very first thing, obviously. If I'm doing a tutorial, I like to kind of just gather my thoughts and kind of probably one of the most important things is to put boundaries around what I'm going to cover, because if you get too excited and start talking about everything, your video will be way too long and nobody will be able to, well, most people won't sit through the whole thing. Next, from there, what I do is I write an outline. I do not write a script and I don't speak from a script when I'm recording the video. I really just write an outline, and the way I do things, you'll see here as we kind of work through it in a little bit more detail, but for me, it comes across most naturally if I just take a pause, look at the next bullet point or next concept that I want to talk about, and then talk about it. It just comes across better. Now, some people can do really, really well with a teleprompter and a very specific script, and I have nothing but respect for the people who can do that. I can't do it, and the times that I've tried, it comes across as super robotic and impersonal and really awkward. So that's just the way I do it. What that means in practical terms is I make a lot of mistakes. Maybe that's ironic because I just made a mistake explaining that I make a lot of mistakes. What that means in practical terms is I do end up making a good number of mistakes and have to cut a lot of material out. And you'll see how that kind of works its way into the workflow as well. The next thing I do is I set up and I shoot the main, what I call the main storyline. Now, it's the talking head portion of the video where I'm describing the product, evaluating it, telling you the results of my tests and things of that nature. So that is the first thing I record. And when I do that, I have my phone with me with my outline on it. I take a pause, I look at it, get the concept in my mind, look back up to the camera and say what I need to say. Then I take a pause, look at the next item and do the same thing over until we get through the whole thing. So the amount of material that we end up cutting out is probably about a quarter, somewhere in there. And that's going to be mistakes that I make and just the time of me kind of orienting myself with what I need to say. Once we've done that, of course, I download all of the footage and the audio clips and I organize them. So I have a little scheme that I use here. I have a sort of a template folder. I have a template Final Cut Pro project that already has the intro and outro music in it. It already has the placeholders for the title, for the summary, and we'll talk about the summary a little bit more in a minute. And what I do is that just makes it a lot quicker for me to be able to kind of slot things in and move forward with the edit. The thing I do to organize things is that I actually rename each file. So for example, with the main storyline that I've just shot, usually I just shoot it all in one take. So I usually name that 01 main. And I do that for both the audio file and the video file. So the next thing I do, because this workflow for YouTube videos is radically different than a narrative film, on a narrative film, what happens is you come back with a whole bunch of different takes of the same thing, and you have scenes, you have takes, you have a whole bunch of footage, a whole bunch of audio. It doesn't make sense to process all that audio in the hopes that some of it will get used. So really what happens in a narrative workflow is you do the edit first, and then you do the audio mix after. In the YouTube workflow where I come away with a single audio clip and a single video clip, I can just go ahead and process the audio first so I don't have to do a round trip later on. So that's what I do. I bring it into Audition. If I have multiple tracks, so for example, if I recorded with both a lavalier microphone and a boom microphone, I'll evaluate and hear which one sounds better. I'll only process the one that I've chosen. Usually it's just going to be the boom. I will take that mainly, to be honest, into Isotope RX, where I like to do most of the processing, But I don't do a whole ton of processing. Really, all I'm doing is I'll apply a high-pass filter. If I'm using a lavalier microphone, I'll generally do some EQ to remove some of the kind of mid-frequency harshness in my voice, which tends to interact badly with a lot of lavalier microphones. So I'll do a little cut there. From there, I don't do any noise reduction because in my studio it's very quiet, so we don't have a lot of noise that we need to reduce anyway. And a lot of times I'm doing recorder and microphone reviews where you wouldn't want to do that anyway so that people can evaluate the performance of the microphone or the recorder. So the next thing I do is loudness normalization, and that process for me includes a little bit of compression just to pull some of those transient peaks down, and then I loudness normalize the overall audio. I usually aim for -16, -17 LUFS. With my compression, I'll do a separate video on this, but I've learned some new techniques recently, especially from my friend Lloyd Puckett, who has a long history of working on audio. Some interesting new things, so watch for that video in the next few weeks here. From there, I take the audio back into Adobe Audition. Because of some quirks with Final Cut Pro 10, at that point I actually convert the mono file back into a dual mono file, so it has a left and a right channel with the exact same thing on both channels. Next up, we come into Final Cut Pro 10 and I do the edit. And really the edit is, again, just the main storyline. All I'm doing is cutting out the pauses, cutting out the mistakes, and trying to do as few cuts as possible. But, you know, I say a lot of things that are silly and I'm not happy with the wording. And so I go back and reshoot them. I don't reshoot them. I just pause and then do another take right there in the same file. And just have to cut out the bad ones, keep the good ones. And I really try to focus on pacing lately. I think it's really important to get the pacing right, especially when you're doing something that's more like a tutorial. And I know some people have said I talk too fast, but and I'm trying to kind of moderate that a little bit. And you can always adjust the speed playback on YouTube. If someone wants to go faster, they're welcome to go faster. If they want to go slower, that's fine too. But I try to hit kind of a really good pace that gives people enough time to absorb the information without feeling like it's getting crammed down their throat. Now, we have a problem. We have a bunch of these jump cuts, and jump cuts just really don't look that great, to be entirely honest. Now, they're very common on YouTube. Lots of people just leave them in there and leave them completely exposed. What I like to do, though, is cover them up with B-roll, not just to hide the jump cut. So I don't just put random B-roll in there or just filler stuff to cover the jump cuts. That's part of the purpose it serves, but I go back and I get some more B-roll for two purposes, not only to cover the jump cuts, but also to illustrate what I'm talking about. And I think it helps tell the story a little bit more effectively. It becomes this kind of integrated, much more smoothly flowing type of story, even if it is just a product review. When you do have some really effective B-roll, it illustrates what I'm talking about. Now, after I have the main storyline edited, I will go back and put in any sort of annotations. And I use some assets that I bought online somewhere for Final Cut Pro 10, some lower thirds, some side info assets, and some titles. And I don't even remember where I got them, but they fit the kind of the color scheme that I've kind of developed over time, the kind of the gold, black, and white color scheme. And so I just use those, and I'll annotate things that need to be annotated with lower thirds. I put in my summary at the very start. And you know what's interesting about the summary is I've actually had people ask me, why do you do that? I mean, a lot of people are very appreciative of it, but some people say, why do you do that? Doesn't that hurt your, overall findability on YouTube? Because the algorithm would make it such that if someone just watched the summary and then abandoned the video from there, that would tell the YouTube algorithm, the search algorithm, that, hey, this video is not that engaging. And that probably is true. But what I'm focused on, what I really, really try to do is make something that has value for people. I realize that not every single product that I review is of interest to every single viewer, obviously. And so what I'm really trying to do is create a valuable video for people who may not be that interested in this product, but can get the gist of it within the first 20 seconds by just listening to the very first part, pausing on the summary, reading through it, and saying, well, if I ever am interested in this product in the future, I know that Curtis has a review, I can come back and watch it then. And I just take the hit. I'm sure that YouTube doesn't necessarily rank me high because of that, but I think it's really valuable. I think what it does do is it makes it for the people that do find value in my videos, find even more value, because for them, I'm not wasting their time. I'm being respectful of their time. And I think people appreciate that, regardless of what the YouTube search algorithm does. So now I have the main storyline done, I have the annotations and the summary done. Now I go back and I watch through for kind of a quality assurance check, but also to catalog what B-roll I need, what I need to show to be able to cut that in over the top of the main storyline. So then I go shoot the B-roll, and that usually I will shoot in ProRes HQ on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, or sometimes I shoot on the Panasonic GH5 or GH5S, just depending on the situation. Next up, I download the clips to my computer, put them in the raw footage folder, just like before, and I number and name each of them as well. So I go ahead and just walk through each of the clips, put a number starting with 10, and give a short description of what's included in that B-roll. And also when I'm shooting the B-roll, I forgot to mention this, as I start each clip that I'm shooting, I will call out what I'm shooting. And that makes it really easy when it comes time to organize and give a name to each of these files once I've downloaded them to the computer. Next, back into Final Cut Pro 10, and I cut in all of the B-roll. And this is a pretty straightforward process. I just kind of watch through, I try to synchronize, and again, we're looking at kind of pacing, and I want the visual B-roll to kind of line up with what I'm talking about. So that obviously just takes time. You have to watch through each of the B-roll clips and figure out where to start it, where to end it, and where to put it over the jump cuts and the rest of the video where I'm talking so that it makes sense to the viewer and kind of tells that visual story. Next up, we do a very fast pass, color grading all of the B-roll. If I shot it on the Panasonic GH5, I just basically use it without any color grading. If I use the Pocket 6K, I will actually just apply the manufacturer's LUT and tweak the exposure as needed. And then we're ready to export. Now, obviously, there are a number of things you have to do as far as the description is concerned. Mainly what I do there is I have a template on that as well. So I will put a summary at the top, 3 little hashtag keywords for that particular video, put all of the links for the relevant products in there, along with the disclosure that these are affiliate links, and also have the music bed reference because I am a music bed ambassador and I use their music as my intro and outro. And then we have a little link to music bed as well. And then copyright, and that's basically it. So that goes up. It all gets uploaded. It's usually done before Sunday morning when it goes up live. And I've been doing the Sunday morning publishing for, I think, a couple years now. And I think that's been working really well for my particular audience, I think. Now, what do you do about archiving? With YouTube videos, I will do the main export, and I do it in fairly high quality. So I always export, except during the middle of the pandemic when everyone was first kind of locked down here in the United States. The internet was just slowing to a crawl. And so for a while there, I was only uploading HD, but normally I upload 4K. So I export a pretty good quality 4K H.264 file from Final Cut. And usually those files, depending on how long they are, come in anywhere from at least 500 megabytes up to, I've seen them as large as 2.8 gigabytes. So that's the only file for my YouTube videos that I archive. I will keep those and archive them off to a spinning disk, a large, 8 terabyte disk or whatever. And then that also gets backed up to the cloud via Backblaze. I do not save any of the raw video clips once the video's been published. I don't save any of the raw audio clips. If I ever need to reference that video again in a future video, I can just bring in that exported file that I used for the upload and use that again. It's YouTube. It's not that precious. So there's a look at my workflow. I don't know if that was helpful for you. I hope it was. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave those down below. And if you've not already subscribed, make sure you do that. And we'll be sure to get you more great videos on how to improve your lighting and sound for video. Talk to you soon.